Okay, so today we're going deep on this really intense moment in history.
Mhm.
You know, picture this a guy, Paul. He's been arrested for what he believes in, and he's standing in front of like Roman power.
Yeah.
King Agrippa, Governor Festus, Bernice.
Oh.
And we've got these sources that show us this clash between like what one person believes and then this whole massive empire.
Right.
And we're going to dig into what we can learn from this whole encounter.
Yeah, this is like a perfect example of how one message can be taken in totally different ways by different people.
Right.
Some get it, some completely reject it.
Yeah.
It's about communication and standing up for what you believe in, even when things get tough.
And that kind of leads us to a question right off the bat. So think about this, true or false. Everyone has a faith story,
Okay.
something they totally believe in or put their trust in,
Interesting.
Our source material actually starts with this idea, and whether or not you agree with it, our deep dive into Paul's story shows us how one guy in a super public and important situation explained his deepest convictions.
Right.
So let's break this down.
Okay, so let's imagine Paul's life before this confrontation with Rome.
Okay.
Acts chapter 26, verses 1 through 11 really highlight that a big part of Paul's hope was the resurrection of the dead,
Right.
especially for believers.
And this wasn't just some kind of like, hoping for the best kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
The text actually says that this hope was rooted in promises that God made to the Jewish patriarchs.
Oh, wow.
Like their ancestors way back.
Okay.
And that's super important because it separates this fleeting, wishful thinking hope from the kind of hope that's anchored in a promise-keeping God.
I see. That makes sense.
It's a powerful contrast to think about.
It is. One is based on what you want. The other is based on what's seen as a divine promise.
Right.
And what's really interesting is how Paul intentionally connected with Agrippa by using his Jewish identity. He used terms like our religion, our fathers, and our 12 tribes.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah, it wasn't just a general speech. It was carefully crafted to resonate with Agrippa.
Right.
And for Agrippa, a king who claimed Jewish heritage but was ruling under Rome, Paul's words about shared ancestry and divine promises would have been a very deliberate point.
Yeah.
Maybe even subtly questioning where his true loyalty lay.
Yeah, it really shows how much Paul understood his audience.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't just talking at him, he was creating a connection.
For sure.
So now let's get into what the source calls Paul's life-changing encounter.
Okay.
This is the core of his story, and it's found in Acts 26, verses 12 to 18.
Okay.
And this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, verse 18 actually lays out the specifics of the mission that Paul felt he was given.
Uh-huh.
And the source wants us to think about why Paul was so detailed here.
I see.
It suggests he was trying to show the amazing transformative power of his own conversion,
Right.
maybe hoping Agrippa would see something in it for himself.
Like something that could change his life, too.
Exactly.
That's smart.
Yeah. By being so specific about how he changed,
Right.
it becomes less abstract,
Totally. And then the source breaks down 5 key spiritual shifts that Paul said were essential.
Okay.
So first, having your eyes open to the truth,
Uh-huh.
then turning from darkness to light,
Right.
turning from the power of Satan to the authority of God,
Okay.
receiving forgiveness for sins,
Mhm.
and then finally getting a place among those set apart for God through faith in Jesus.
Right.
Those are the core parts of his message.
They are. And when Paul talks about being sanctified, what does that actually mean here?
It basically means being set apart for God, seen as holy through faith in Jesus.
Okay.
These 5 changes show a total realignment of your life and your loyalties.
I see.
So now let's shift to Paul's life since this huge change.
Okay.
And this is in Acts 26, verses 19 to 23.
All right.
And we see how his faith played out in what he did and the message he preached.
Right.
The source tells us about the gospel truths that Paul shared.
Okay.
This included the need for people to repent,
Mm.
to have a change of heart and mind, and turn towards God. And super important to show that change through their actions by living differently.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't just saying sorry, it was about a real change in how you lived.
I see.
And to connect this to the bigger picture, Paul always said that these truths weren't something new he made up.
Okay.
He argued they actually lined up perfectly with the prophecies in Moses' writings and the Old Testament prophets.
Right.
Specifically, that the Christ would suffer, rise from the dead, and bring truth to both Jewish people and Gentiles.
That's interesting.
He was grounding his claims in their shared religious history.
Yeah, he was showing how his message fit into the story they already knew.
Exactly. Now, the big turning point in this encounter is how people react to Paul's powerful testimony.
Oh, wow.
Our source in Acts 26, verses 24 to 31, looks at the very different responses of Festus and Agrippa.
Okay.
And this brings up a huge question. Why did the same message get such opposite reactions?
Right.
Festus's reaction is full of doubt, even mockery.
Mm-hmm.
Common responses were that Paul was crazy or irrational and that what he was saying was unbelievable.
He just couldn't grasp Paul's ideas.
So why such a negative reaction? Yeah, was it just disbelief, or was there something more in Paul's message that maybe offended the Romans back then?
Right.
Perhaps the idea of a crucified and resurrected Messiah challenged their ideas about power and gods, and it's a clash of worldviews, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Agrippa's reaction was more complicated. The source suggests he was asking questions not convinced, but kind of open, curious, undecided, and ultimately uncommitted.
So he was listening and thinking about it, but not fully accepting it.
Exactly.
It's fascinating to see these totally different responses.
Yeah.
The same message said with the same passion lands so differently based on what the listener already believes, how open they are, and what they understand going in.
Right.
The source mentions this understanding receptivity matrix. And while we can't put Festus and Agrippa on it for sure, their reactions tell us they were in very different spots.
Yeah.
Festus seems to be low on both understanding and being open to the ideas, while Agrippa gets it more, but still hesitates to fully accept what it all means.
Right.
It's kind of a reality check to see how two people can hear the exact same thing and have such opposite reactions.
Yeah.
Makes you think about the filters we all have when we hear something new.
Totally. It shows that the listener plays a huge part in communication.
Yeah.
You can say something clearly and passionately, but how the other person takes it depends a lot on their own internal world.
It really does.
So what are the big takeaways for you from this whole deep dive?
Well, going back to the beginning, Paul's appearance before these powerful Romans wasn't just a legal thing he had to do. It was a chance for him to tell his personal faith story and the beliefs that changed his whole life's direction.
And to circle back to that question about everyone having a faith story,
Right.
the source makes a great point no matter what you believe. Paul's approach shows us valuable things about how people explain what they deeply believe in and the incredibly different ways others can react. There's a universal aspect to sharing your beliefs, even if those beliefs themselves are very different.
Which leads us to something really important to consider.
Okay.
What can we learn from Paul's example? Not about the specific religious stuff, but about the courage it might take to share what you believe in when people might be skeptical or even hostile.
That's a really powerful thought to leave with everyone.
It is.
Think about that courage, that conviction when facing potential disbelief.
Yeah.
It makes us think about times in our own lives, maybe in different situations where we need to say something we deeply believe in, even though people might doubt us or disagree.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time.